Knowledge with Chris Graham.
It has been a while since I've done a politics podcast. Chris Graham here on Street Knowledge, and we're going to do one today. We're going to talk some politics. There's so much going on in the world that you just, my career started, I had two paths. Sports writing, politics writing. Sports was the first job I got. Politics was the first job I really wanted in the business, and now I do them both. And I've hosted, this podcast for the last couple of years. I did a show called ACC Nation for 5 or 6 years. Lost track of exactly how many years that one was. But I've also done TV where it was news, public affairs programming. And so I'm saying that for all my listeners out there, like, okay, Chris, download your podcast. You're talking politics. Yeah. If you don't want to listen to politics, you don't have to listen to politics. But I think I do a pretty good job with this, and I've really got to get into these two stories. We're going to talk about the Trump-Biden-Ukraine story. We're also going to talk about a new Quinnipiac poll and some of my insights into breaking the numbers down and where things might go. I think these are both very important stories to get into. First, the Trump-Biden-Ukraine story. And I have to admit, until I really spent a few hours today diving into this story, I didn't know much more than you probably do listening in terms of the bare more than the bare details. The bare details are, as you know, if you turn on the TV at all today, last couple of days, last maybe week or so, if you've only seen a headline somewhere on social media, something else, you know that, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, talked to the President of Ukraine, something involving Joe Biden, and that's what you pretty much know. So I wanted to dive into the story, one, to learn myself, but also then hopefully to, I don't want to just believe. And what happens, I think, when we hear a headline, see something on social media, somebody tells us something at the post office, we tend to just go for the superficial, and we don't really know what's going on. I wanted to dive into it to figure it out for myself, and then when I learned the real behind the scenes of this, get beyond what the especially the TV cable networks do, where it's a Democrat yelling something, a Republican yelling something, and then you're supposed to figure it out, and of course you don't know any more than that they're yelling at each other. And I think that's what's a problem with our democracy right now, is that's the way our information is presented to us. But in any case, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to tell you what I learned, and it's very detailed. So you know that there was a phone call between President Trump and the President of Ukraine. Boy, I'm not going to pronounce this right. Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky's easy. Volodymyr is not very easy. But the Ukraine president, newly elected just this year, and they talked on July 25th. And what you've been led to believe is that there was something bad about that from President Trump. I'm going to tell you that it probably was. I don't know if it's removal from office level. I think it very well could be. I think it's worthy of investigation. But I start out my tale here by saying, I'm quoting Trump now. The White House released a transcript of this, seemingly thinking it would exonerate the president. It really only deepened it. And I say transcript more like a memo that included some quotes from the call, but it's hard to call it a transcript. A transcript would be simply everything that President Trump said, everything that President Zelensky from Ukraine said, and that would be it. But it wasn't an unredacted entirety of the conversation. So let's just get that out of the way first. But President Trump at one point says, "I would like you to do us a favor." Well, okay, already and I'm starting there with this because I think that's important. Because you're not supposed to believe, if you're a Republican partisan, one, you're probably still not listening to me. You know that Chris Graham does UVA sports well, but he also is a Democrat. That's fine. But for those out there who are still listening, you're not supposed to believe that Trump, in asking the Ukraine president for a favor, is not anything other than evidence of anything resembling a quid pro quo. But when you read this memo, which again is a reflection of what was said back and forth between Trump and Zelensky, the request for a favor, Donald Trump, again, reminding you, "I would like you to do us a favor," Trump said to Zelensky. The request for a favor came immediately after Trump and Zelensky had just talked about U.S. aid to Ukraine. This was a 5-page memo. I didn't do a word count. It was the White House didn't make it very easy. They released a PDF that was not copyable. in terms of, so you couldn't get a word count. Word count would give me a sense of how long the phone call was. We're told it's a 30-minute phone call. A 5-minute transcript would not be a 30-minute phone call. 30-minute phone call would be a much longer transcript. So that's why I tell you it's not a transcript. But so right after they talk about U.S. aid to Ukraine, Trump says, "I would like you to do us a favor." And let me just point out to you quotes from the immediate 2 paragraphs before Trump says, "I would like you to do us a favor," to point to you that this was about the U.S. aid. I think it's something you want to look at, but the United States has been very good to Ukraine. I wouldn't say it's reciprocal necessarily, because things are happening that are not good, but the United States has been very, very good to Ukraine. That's Trump, of course. That sounds like Trump. That sounds like an accurate representation of what Trump would have said. Zelensky's reply: "The United States is a much bigger partner than the European Union, and I'm very grateful to you for that, because the United States is doing quite a lot for Ukraine." So those 2 things are said, and then President Trump says, "I would like you to do us a favor." Context to this, I think, is very important. The 2 explicitly talk about how Trump days earlier had told his chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, to put $391 million in aid to Ukraine on hold. They didn't talk about it explicitly. At least in the 5 pages of the memo on the transcript, partial transcript that was released, they never explicitly talked, as far as we know now. We're still waiting for the unredacted full transcript that they talked about that aid specifically. But even this, you're talking about, hey, the United States has been good to you. Hey, yes, it has been good to us. Then I want you to do us a favor. So there's no doubt that $391 million in aid that was put on hold is hovering over this discussion. There's no doubt about that. And if you doubt that, shame on you. You just admit it. You know that this is the case. Now, whether or not, again, I don't think the question is whether or not this is a quid pro quo. It's whether or not, later on, whether or not you think that this rises to the level of this guy is abusing the office. I don't think there's question there, but you may, and that's fine. Moving forward now from where we are. And the favor that Trump wanted from Zelensky is actually 2 favors, and these are very important. And this is where I start telling you, the more you look at this, the more this stinks to high heaven. First, Trump wanted Zelensky to have his top prosecutor track down what you can only describe as a far-right conspiracy theory that Ukrainians had some murky role in emails stolen from the Democrat National Committee in 2016. Here's the quote from Trump in the memo transcript. "The server, they say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on the whole situation." So he wants the Ukrainian president to find this server. I'm laughing when I say this. That doesn't exist in Ukraine. What he wants there is, if there were such a server that the Ukraine has with emails stolen from the Democrat National Committee in 2016, this is Putin pulling puppet strings. It's the idea that Russia had nothing to do with throwing the 2016 election. This is very important to Trump for obvious reasons. The second request that Trump made, and this is a much more detailed, and that one's so simple. The second one is much more detailed. He wants help investigating Hunter Biden. Now, you've heard that name, Hunter Biden, son of former Vice President Joe Biden, obviously, who is now running for the Democratic Party presidential nomination. We'll talk more about that later. We're going to talk some poll numbers regarding Biden. And the investigation of Biden that Trump's requesting help from the Ukrainian president for is regarding Hunter Biden's position on the board of Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian energy company. Hunter Biden served on the board of Burisma Holdings for 5 years, 2014 until earlier this year, 2019. What about Burisma Holdings? Well, first, let me go into that first. Burisma Holdings is a company owned by I was going to say Russian oligarch. We use the term oligarch usually in reference to Russian corrupt businessmen. Actually, a Ukrainian oligarch by the name of, I'm going to mess this up too, Mykola, that's probably the easy part, Mykola Zlochevsky. Zlochevsky is a billionaire oligarch who, it is alleged, used his position under 2 presidents ago administration, 2010 to 2012, as ecology minister to issue oil and gas leases to companies that belong to him. So essentially, he's grifting. You talk about the ultimate grift. He is a guy that is the ecology minister, and then he uses that power to write contracts for companies that he owns. That's alleged. It's been investigated off and on for many years, continues to be investigated. And that's the company that Hunter Biden sat on the board of and got paid. I mean, this is not like, if you're familiar with people who serve on boards, I've served on a couple of nonprofit boards. You don't get paid to serve on a nonprofit board. When you serve on the board of a very big energy company, you get paid a lot of money, $50,000 a month in the case of Hunter Biden. So not an insignificant amount of money, and a company being investigated by Ukrainian authorities for possible corruption. And so here's a quote from Donald Trump, and then we'll use that to set off more talk about this. Quote from Trump: "The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution. A lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever that you can do with the Attorney General, in this case the U.S. Attorney General William Barr, would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me." This is just a right-wing wet dream that this is what actually happened. That Joe Biden stopped any investigation into Burisma Holdings in Ukraine, or that there even was an investigation specifically into Hunter Biden and his relationship with this company on whose board he served. As far as anybody knows, there was not an investigation into Hunter Biden involving Burisma Holdings. There was an investigation into the owner of the company, Zlochevsky, but not specifically at all, Hunter Biden. So that's first. Hunter Biden, not under investigation. Second, this idea that Joe Biden stopped an investigation into Burisma Holdings. Here's the real part behind that, the real story behind that. There was a push from the U.S. in the Obama administration, for Joe Biden, vice president under Obama, and several U.S. allies to Ukraine to fire the then top prosecutor, a guy named Viktor Shokin, in 2016 because of a feeling among the Western leaders that Shokin was soft on corruption in the country. He was an appointee of then Ukraine President Petro Poroshenko. So Poroshenko eventually, and the Ukraine parliament eventually removes Shokin from office, agreeing with Western leaders that, and in fact, Poroshenko had run for president and was elected president in 2014 on a platform of, I will root out corruption in this country. And there are indications that he was trying to, but also that those attempts were half-hearted. There was a number of that I recall from my survey of this, that there were 189 corruption cases brought in Ukrainian courts during the Poroshenko administration, if you want to call it that administration, the Poroshenko regime. I guess more appropriate for a country like Ukraine. And none of them led to prosecutions, successful prosecutions. So that might indicate to you just how soft on corruption the Poroshenko administration probably was. Incidentally, he was swept out of office in his first run for re-election in 2019. He only got 24.5% of the vote. That might speak to how Ukrainians thought about Poroshenko and his work. So Joe Biden was among many Western leaders saying, change your prosecutor. He's not working hard on corruption cases. That prosecutor is removed from office, and this is what is being twisted by Trump and his minions into Joe Biden stopped an investigation into Joe Biden's son, who was not being investigated, and he didn't stop any investigation. He simply advocated, like other Western leaders did, for the removal from office of a prosecutor who seemed to be in bed with the people he was investigating. This is pretty easy. This is not difficult at all to figure out. And also it's not even the case, again, I mentioned earlier, that Zlochevsky is still under investigation. There was in 2017 what seemed to be for a moment a resolution in the case when a Ukrainian court ordered the investigation to stop. And then in 2018 some audio tapes emerged that appeared to tie Zlochevsky to the grift that he'd been accused of, and so that investigation was opened. And as far as I can tell, it's kind of hard to get a 100% sense of this. I did some Google searches after getting to this part of the story. It does appear that investigation, relaunched in 2018, still ongoing. So So if Joe Biden was bragging, which he never did, but if he was bragging that he had the investigation stopped, it's ongoing. So, if he'd been bragging that, which again he's not, he'd be bragging about something that hadn't happened. And so, the now Biden did take credit, due credit for helping hasten the removal of office of that prosecutor, Shokin. My read on that is that's Joe Biden being Joe Biden in the sense that, and it's not good Joe Biden. I'm not dismissing this at all. He's bragging about something that he shouldn't have bragged about in the sense that he got a guy removed from office. Joe Biden was one of many voices pushing for this. And so the idea that Biden was trying to advance that he had pushed for this guy to be knocked out of office and he's knocked out of office, that's an American thing. It's a politician thing. I don't think Americans don't have a corner on the market on bragging about things that politicians do and giving them too much credit for that kind of thing. And so I'd like to point out too here, this is one of those truth stranger than fiction type things. I'll mention Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma Holdings, and how the allegations that he used his service as ecology minister to throw oil and gas licenses to companies that he owned. He was serving as ecology minister in the government of then Ukraine President Viktor Yanukovych. And Yanukovych, you might remember that name, Viktor Yanukovych. Yanukovych employed as a lobbyist a guy named Paul Manafort. You might be familiar with that name, Paul Manafort, former campaign manager of who? Donald Trump. The guy's now serving in prison, of course. This is just so weird. So the owner of the Ukrainian oil company under continued investigation for illegal grift, under a president whose campaign who hired as a lobbyist the campaign manager of Donald Trump. Now Donald Trump is using this story somehow to cast aspersions on Joe Biden. What the actual fuck is going on here? Except for the obvious. And I apologize for the bad language. If you don't like bad language, that's about as nice as I can put it. So at the bottom of all this, now we are where we are. Zelensky promised to have his top prosecutor at the time in July. This was a July 25th call. Zelensky's still so new in office that he had at that point had not actually named a nominee for the top prosecutor's position, and he even told Trump in the call that person would not start on the job until September. We're in September now. But at that time, he didn't have a top prosecutor, so he had to say that all he could do was he would have that person, when that person was appointed in office, look into the situation. But he did, quote, say, look into the situation. Trump then told Zelensky he would have his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, give you a call, and I'm also going to have Attorney General Barr call, and we will get to the bottom of it. I heard the prosecutor was treated very badly, Trump said. Of course, it wasn't. The previous prosecutor was not treated badly. He was removed from office because he was at best inept, at worst in league with the people he was investigating. And he was a very fair prosecutor, again. That's laughable. So good luck with everything. Your economy is going to get better, I predict. Let me emphasize that. Trump said, quote, according to the memo that purports to be a transcript released by the White House today, he said, after all this back and forth, your economy is going to get better, I predict. I'm going to leave that for you to think. Actually, I'm not going to leave that for you to think. I was going to leave that for you to think, what would he mean your economy is going to get better, I predict? To remind you, several days before this phone call, Trump ordered his chief of staff to withhold the money that the United States had pledged, and actually Congress had budgeted in aid for Ukraine. He ordered that money held. Then this phone call happens. Trump reminds the president of Ukraine that we've been great friends. Then he asks for a favor. The president of Ukraine says, I will look into the situation. Trump says, your economy is going to get better, I predict. Quid pro quo. That's open and shut. Now, The Democrats in the House have said we will launch an impeachment inquiry into this. And what more do you need? Obviously we don't know because what we do know at this stage is still very limited. The White House has released this obviously redacted memo purporting to be a transcript of the call. We do know that there's a whistleblower complaint. We don't know the identity of the whistleblower who made the complaint, but we do know that Fox News, carrying water for President Trump, is saying that this person has partisan ties. So even though the rest of the world doesn't know who this guy is yet, the president's told Fox News that this person has partisan ties, and he doesn't imply Republican partisan ties, right? So, but this whistleblower, from what we know of the complaint, said that there were numerous instances of President Trump pressuring the Ukrainian president on this matter. Clearly, the President of the United States is using taxpayer money appropriated by Congress as a wedge to wield on a foreign leader to investigate a political enemy of President Trump, to use information that would be gained through such to discredit that political enemy and to win an election. This is a high crime. This is a high crime. So, breaking things down, I live in the 6th District of Virginia, and I've never been more disappointed. It's a very Republican district, the district I live in. I mean, the area I live in is definitely the county, that Augusta County, the namesake of Augusta Free Press, is very Republican. The two cities that we serve the most, Stanton and Waynesboro, the third city being Charlottesville, definitely tend Democratic. But the district does. The district is a lot of it's a lot of rural communities. Long district goes from the Winchester front rural area all the way down to Salem, roughly. What would that cover? 170 miles of Interstate 81. It's a long district. It's some folks listening out there might live in, especially if you live in urban areas, you might live in a very compact district. We're not compact. It's very rare that I go to Salem. Very rare I go to Winchester, and I live in the middle of this district. That's how big this district is. Ben Klein succeeding Bob Goodlatte. Bob Goodlatte had made himself known as the House Judiciary Committee chairman that did his best to stonewall the Obama initiatives back in the 2 terms of President Obama, and then Goodlatte did his best to carry water for Donald Trump, ramrodding things through from the Trump agenda for the first 2 years of the Trump administration until the House was won back by the Democrats in the 2018 elections. Ben Klein served as a House Delegates representative including the Augusta County area for 15 years, I think it was, 15 or 16 years. And he's a Republican. I don't agree with Ben on a lot of issues. There are some issues that there is agreement on. But I would never have said that, and I don't say this about a lot of folks. There are plenty of Democrats I've met who are absolute a-holes to deal with. There are plenty of Republicans who are good people to deal with, and Ben Klein's always been a good person to deal with. But after his statement today on the announcement from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi that the House would initiate impeachment proceedings, I promise you're never going to hear me say a nice thing about Ben Klein again. It breaks my heart to say that. I've always thought he's a nice guy, but here's what Ben Klein had to say. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has caved to those on the far left of her party who are demanding an official impeachment inquiry. She knows there's not enough support in the full House to pass a formal resolution of impeachment, so she's thrown her support behind the embarrassing spectacle of hearings that have been going on for months in the Judiciary Committee. It is my hope we can put aside these political games and work toward addressing important issues facing the American people. It'd be fine if his predecessor and mentor, but Ben Klein, served on the congressional staff before he then moved on to elected office himself in the House Delegates. He served on the congressional staff of Bob Goodlatte, who I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm saying that because I know it, was a key player in the farce impeachment of Bill Clinton in 1998, which was totally a political move. It was a move to abrogate the 1992 and 1996 elections, and I mean, essentially, let's just put it like it was. They impeached him for getting a blowjob in the Oval Office. Not in this case, like in the case of Donald Trump, is alleged to be selling our country to Russia. But one's fine, the other not fine, and Ben Klein's fine. If you're standing beside the president, you're. I can't think of anything nice to say, so I'm not going to say it at this stage. But Ben Klein, disappointing statement from Ben Klein. Wanted to change gears big time now. And this was what I thought would define the day. I knew that this, the White House had said this was going to be coming out today, and I had to spend the time researching that story to learn more for myself, and then hopefully if I learned more for myself, I could educate others. This morning, first I wake up early this morning. My wife Crystal had a suicide prevention talk to lead beginning at 8:30, so early day at the Augusta Free Press office, earlier than I prefer, after staying up late to help the Washington Nationals clinch a playoff berth, at least in my mind. But the latest Quinnipiac University poll was out this morning, first thing. So I got to spend some time diving into this story, and I think that these two there's some correlation, I think, to what I'll tell you here. First, wanted to look at the Democratic Party race, and surprising numbers. Surprises and maybe some more definition in this race. Joe Biden, since Joe Biden had gotten into the race, had a pretty solid lead in every poll that I'd seen. But now, looks like Elizabeth Warren has a slight lead, and it's slight, but it's a lead, and so it's newsworthy. She's at 27% among Democratic voters, independent voters who lean Democratic, with Biden at 25%, so 27-25 for Warren. Bernie Sanders, he's in shouting range, 16%. And then after that, I think you're talking about Pete Buttigieg at 7%, Kamala Harris at 3%, no one else over 2%. So we had all those debates this summer with 20-plus candidates. I mean, actually with, having to break up the debates into 2 10-person plus debates. It looks like to me, if you ask me, where does this go? Warren 27%. Biden 25%, Sanders 16%, Buttigieg 7%, Harris 3%. No one else above 2%. This is a 3-person race at this stage. Buttigieg and Harris, I was asked by my wife, actually, so what do they do at this stage? I don't think you drop out, today or tomorrow. It's still September. The Iowa caucuses are in January. They're less than 4 months away. Folks have been working their butts off, spending lots of other people's money to build up name recognition in Iowa. And if you're Pete Buttigieg, if you're Kamala Harris, if anybody else, because Kamala Harris actually saying her name in this context, when no other candidate tops 2 and she's at 3, she's on the fringe here too. But if you think you're polling better in Iowa, you hang around a little longer to see if you can build your standing back up in the national race and build your standing back up in Iowa. But those numbers for Buttigieg and Harris can both be very damaging if they're repeated in some more polls. We'll have to start watching and paying attention to some more national polls, because no matter what you think you may have in place in Iowa right now, you may think you're polling better in Iowa. And, of course, if you hit a home run in Iowa, doesn't matter what the national numbers say. The Iowa numbers can influence those national numbers in January when Iowa's settled. But you got to get there first, and we're still 3+ months out, probably 3.5 months out from the Iowa voting in those caucuses. And so, if you're Buttigieg and you're Harris, you may think again. We can Hail Mary, home run, slam dunk, whatever we can do. And then we can survive until New Hampshire, and if we can do something in New Hampshire, then we make it to the various Super Tuesdays. but you got to get there. And these numbers for Buttigieg and Harris and the others, we'll just lump the others into the others, it can be hard to continue fundraising to the level that you need to continue to build on whatever foundation you think you may have in Iowa. And I guess I should throw New Hampshire in this too, because the New Hampshire is always. I'm going to look this up while we're talking here, but the New Hampshire and Iowa are usually like a week apart from each other, and so. You need to have resources on the ground already. After to be able to take advantage of whatever success you may have. So let's see here. Let's see. 2020. Let's just do a quick one here. 2020 Democratic schedule. But and I should have this committed, but I'm sort of just coming late into this game in terms of nomination schedule. There we go. Isn't this fun listening to someone like look up something on the internet? Okay, there's the. Yeah, that's fine. That's all fine. There are just so many people who, for some reason, are in these races. Why is this? Here we go. Actually, February 3rd, Iowa, February 11th, New Hampshire. So I said January. I thought in past years it had been January. So February 3rd, Iowa. So we're still 4 months and a week or so out from Iowa. But then right away, you got New Hampshire. Then a week and a half until Nevada. Then another week until South Carolina. Then the Super Tuesday, March 3rd, includes Virginia. So, yeah, you got that actually makes it tougher. The fact that it's another extra month. It's 4.5 months. I thought it was 3.5 months. You got to have cash to burn through to get to that stage if you're the Buttigiegs, the Harrises, the other candidates. Bernie Sanders, he's at 16%. I mean, he's a known entity. He's the guy in this race that ran in 2016, and his supporters thought the nomination got stolen from him. I think there's a lot of Warren support there that used to be for Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden is certainly the centrist alternative there in the middle. What interests me, I guess, there is that Biden is, he's been the centrist alternative and had the lead, and there was a feeling that the numbers were adding up between Warren and Sanders, where, if the progressive voters can coalesce behind one of those, they could beat Biden. Well, hell, at this stage, they would be at a combined 43%, Biden at 25%. So I'm not even sure if it's a divide and conquer for Biden at this stage, just kind of looking at it from a game theory standpoint. But that's the race there. Now, the other side of it is Quinnipiac also asked about opinions of Donald Trump, of course. It's very important to do that. And at first glance, you'd say, wow, Trump has no chance. Not only is he facing impeachment, which these polls were done before certainly that announcement, but his favorability split. He's very much underwater. 38% approving, 55% disapproving. And you say, wow, and 54% of voters, at least in this poll, say that they will definitely not vote for Trump in 2020. So those are, 54% say they're definitely not going to vote for you. That's playing a football game that you're going to lose. You're going to lose if that's if the other team is going to score 49 and you can only score 7, you're not going to win the game. Of course, an election is not a football game. Remember back 3.5 years ago, September 2016, Quinnipiac had Trump's favorability at 36.57. He's at 38.55 now. He's actually better than he was in September 2016. Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton was at a 41.55 negative split. So favorability for Trump was minus 21. Hillary was at minus 14. And then you look at the splits for Warren and Biden. Let's just look at those two. Warren's at 39.41, so she's slightly underwater. Biden's at 45.45. So what you can see here is clear. You're seeing this right now with the Trump team response to the impeachment news today. What's going on is pretty clear. They need to muddy the waters. I mean, if I'm advising them, hey, they've got you. They've got you, Donald. They got you. You talk to the Ukraine president, quid pro quo. It's awful. So they're relying on the fact that you, the my listener today, the reader, Augusta Free Press reader and watcher and viewer and listener and whatever else of various and sundry websites and podcasts and cable TV news shows and whatever else, that you don't know the details. And if all you know about it is the superficial, the headline, where you read one headline and it says Donald Trump puts pressure on Ukraine president to investigate Biden, and then you have another, Trump says Biden corrupt. If that's all you know, and that's all you got, then you're going to weigh the two. And the tribe you belong to, you're going to buy the story. And so you can bet that, I mean, that's what Trump did so well in 2016. Muddy the waters. This is a post-truth society. I hate to even think that. We don't believe in truth. We believe in what we believe. Your opinion is as important as the truth. That's what we've been taught. You have the right to free speech. Alternative facts, according to Kellyanne Conway. So that's where we are, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because I'll give this story. This is pre-Trump, so Trump has perfected the Republican playbook of the last several cycles. But I remember back in 2008 when I was deciding who to support for the Democratic presidential nomination, and I had a lot of respect for both the top two candidates, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And I decided to support Barack Obama because to me, I really felt like there were so many similarities between the two that I couldn't go wrong either way, in my opinion. But the reason I supported Obama was, well, come on. We know Hillary Clinton is going to have some baggage. She's a Clinton. Republicans get hard-ons for anything involving the word Clinton, so they're going to bring out the right-wing spook machine, and they have a lot of ammunition. At least they've created in the minds of folks like you listening and others that there's ammunition. So, and we don't have anything on Obama. Gosh, Obama, man, what's wrong with the guy? They got nothing on Obama, so I'll support Obama because I would love the race in 2008 to be about the issues. Holy crap, the issues. And so you know what happened. You don't have to actually have something on a candidate. You can make it up. That's where we are in this country. We just make crap up. What the hell is wrong with us? We have wealth unknown in human history at our disposal. We can't figure out how to provide health care to ourselves. We can't figure out how to share wealth with the people who actually create it. And I'm sorry, if you're a Republican still listening, I'm really sorry. Thank you for staying on and being a good sport. But no, the American oligarchs sitting in their ivory towers are not the wealth creators in this country. It's the people who do the work on the front lines who are the wealth creators. I'm not saying pay everybody equally. I'm not a Karl Marx person, but there's a lot of what he said that it makes a lot of sense, and you've got to pay the workers more than you're paying them now. You can't have the disparity in wealth that we have now. Study the French Revolution, folks. Go to Wikipedia and type in French Revolution, and tell me that we're not close to that right now. In terms of disparity of income, disparity of outcomes, disparity in opportunities. We have the ability in this country, and the Donald Trumps of our country, the tycoons, the Kochs, and people like that, they'd still be insanely, fabulously, obscenely wealthy if we taxed them at a fair rate, so that because they didn't create the wealth themselves. One, the people who work for them are not fairly compensated. Two, the benefits of society that make it possible for people to accumulate vast wealth. They didn't build the interstate networks. They didn't build the airports. They didn't educate the people who work for them. They didn't build the internet. They don't patrol the seas. They don't patrol the skies. They don't police their own communities. All that's provided for by the common wealth that we have. The fact that we have a social contract that provides for those services. They just skim off the top. So they'd still tax them fairly. They're still going to be insanely, obsequiously wealthy. And the rest of us would have health care. The rest of us would have education. We would have opportunities. Shorter work weeks, 40-hour work week. Let's make it 32. Automation has improved worker productivity. The benefits of which have gone to the super wealthy, at the expense of those of us who, again, create the wealth with our work. So, we have our priorities out of whack. It's not hard to get them back into whack, but we have to have an open mind and approach it that way. I'd like to say I have confidence that we will. I am 47 years old. Actuarial table suggests, and plus, I'm at this stage pretty healthy. I'm a runner. My resting heart rate's 46. I should have lived in my late 80s, 40 years. It ain't going to happen in 40 years. It's never going to happen. The greedy will continue to divide us against each other, and that's what's going to happen. And they use these stories to do so. And we can see what's going on behind the scenes. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's where we are right now. So I hate to leave you on that depressing note, but don't let it be. Prove me wrong, America. Prove me wrong, you listener. Don't just be angry. Don't just have coffee with a friend and complain about this. Do something about it. Vote for people who will hold corrupt leaders accountable. When you have the opportunity to vote up or down on a corrupt leader next November, November 2020, vote down on that corrupt leader. And then the person you vote for to replace that corrupt leader, hold that person accountable, man or woman. Elizabeth Warren's the favorite right now, right? Hold that person accountable. Hold the people that person puts in important offices below them accountable. A frustrating thing about the Trump administration is not only that the president himself is obscenely corrupt, but the people he's put in key positions in his cabinet are corrupt. Key Republican leaders in the Senate are corrupt. People who are skimming money off of the top to put in their own pockets. We're not. When I read about Ukraine and I read about the struggles that country's had, they're now on their third president who's claimed to be an anti-corruption president, and they're still no closer to rooting out extensive corruption in their country. It's not hard for me to say, boy, that they're not much different than we are, or what we're becoming anyway. But you can change it. You can change it. Don't just complain about it. Do something about it. Voting is one thing. Organizing other people is another thing. And you can be the change that you want to be, that you want to bring. So I will leave it at that. Thank you for listening, and please don't hate me. But I had to get this out there, and I'm going to do more of these. And so I hope they're educational. I hope they're helpful. I want to thank you for listening tonight, and have a great night, everybody.